Continue with Amud HaTefilah, the pillars of prayer, pillar of prayer from the Baal Shem Tov. We're holding entry 27, Chav sign. So last week we discussed a little bit this, just to recap very quickly and to understand something a little bit more deeper. So what we're trying to understand today, God willing, is the idea, what the Baal Shem Tov writes, what's written in the name of the Baal Shem, is gam in tefilosity zacha brura. That if the person's prayer, the words that he's davening, the words of his prayer are zacha, refined and clear, then bevade, certainly from his breath, the holy breath that comes out of himself, he will be connected with the Hevel Elyon, with the divine animating force of breath. So the general teaching is basically teaching us as follows. Just to recap very quickly, is that the world, there are three levels deep within the creation. The fourth is the way the world exists within the Creator's mind. That's the fourth letter of the name of Hashem, the Yud. But we're going to talk about the externalization of the world, of the reality, the manifestation of physical form. And that takes on three shapes. It takes on the world of souls, which is the idea of breath. It takes on the world of angels, the Mechzav Malachim, Olam Malachim, the world of angels, and in the physical world, Olam HaShafal, Olam HaSiyah, the physical reality. These correspond to the three forms of creation. The creation that comes about through speech, which is the externalization of something. When something exists within you, that you externalize using the potential of speech to express the idea outward. So whether it's an emotion that's expressed outward, or a thought that's expressed outward, the idea that you have expressed outward. So speech is the means through which something becomes externalized. And in the process of externalization, so there's the way the world exists within the Creator's mind, Kaviyachol, which is the Yud, and then it descends and it's manifest in three forms, three grades of reality. One is the way it exists within breath, which is the world of souls. One is the way it exists within the wind within this mouth, which is the world of angels. And then the final form is the way it's expressed in speech. In speech, it's the way it's physical reality. The world of wind is the way things exist within an angelic state. And the way it exists within breath is the way it exists within a soul state. Now, we explained last week that these are not three separate dimensions of reality, but three levels of dimensions of reality deep. If you experience the world as something that's external, a creation that's external from the Creator, but through the words, through the expression of this divine speech, you can recognize the Creator, or you can look at a sunset or a sunrise and say, how wonderful is the handiwork of the Creator, which means you're in dialogue and relationship with the Creator. So there's a creation and a Creator. That's one dimension of reality. A deeper dimension of reality is an angelic reality, where you recognize that everything is just another divine messenger, and everything you're in dialogue with is an expression of the divine messenger to you, and it's a malach, it's an angel. That's the way Maimonides, the Rambam, defines an angel. It's a conduit of energy, which is a shliach, something that's expressing a purpose, a reason, and that's a deeper way of living. And the deepest way of living and that's the experience of being within the mouth of the Creator, as it were. There's a separation, creation and Creator. And the highest level of living, which is the world of souls, is that it's a chelik elokah, it's a part of the divine, which is the way it exists within the lungs of the Creator, as it were, which is the source of breath, which is the Hevel Elyon, the supernal breath. That idea is even a deeper way of existing, because even though it's a paradoxical statement, chelik elokah, chelik means a part, elokah means divine. It's like saying you're a part of the everything. And by definition, that's a contradiction in terms, because if you're saying you're a part, that means it's only this finite dimension of it. And if you say of the everything, everything is infinite. So that in itself is paradoxical, or it's oxymoronic to say this statement. But the truth is that is actually the best way to describe something that's not world, which is created through speech. Not only is it a messenger of, but also has an independent sense of self, albeit without free choice, which is an angelic reality. And the higher level of reality is that it's like, in the words of the Mittler Rebbe, it's the nitzes boyer that comes into the nitzes nivra, the spark of the divine that becomes part of the spark of becomes one into the spark of the creation, which is a chelik elokah. It's part and whole. And precisely that's the paradox in that statement, that we want to say something is elokus, not eliki, like the Tzemach Tzedek writes, not divine, but divinity, an expression of divinity. That's the level of the soul. Okay, so that's what we spoke about in very quickly in last time. Just to recap very quickly, this is what we spoke about last time. Now we have to understand what is it that what the Baal Shem Tov is saying is that if a person's prayers, a person's tefillah is zacho brura, specifically when a person's prayers are pure and refined and clear, that's when this process of his own inner breath, his own inner exhale connects with the ultimate divine inhale. When you're exhaling all of yourself at every single moment, which is a moment of death. The expiration of self, which is the ratzeh, the desire to expire within the one, and then it's received, so to speak, from the Hevel Elyon and is inhaled upwards, from below to above. So the man's exhale becomes part of the divine inhale, as it were, and then it's re-energized, and then it's put back down, which is the shoiv, and which is it's returning. The energy is returning now. The divine flow is returning, and a person inhales that and receives no oxygen. And that's the process. A person is connecting with the shefa, with the actual flow itself. But what does it mean that? But this would seem to say that this exists always. Any person that's even breathing, just a mere act of breathing, you're going through the same process of this connecting to the circuitry, as it wish, and continuing the process of what the shefa is doing, what the flow is doing, the ratz of a shoiv, of the movement and returning. So what does it mean specifically when he says that if a person's prayers are zachar brura? So to understand this, you can look in Bereshis, if you have the book in front of you, in the Baal Shem Tov. So I'll read two ideas from Baal Shem. One comes to the Arvinachal, and this is what he says in the name of Baal Shem. When it says a man became a living being. So the Unkelist, the translation of the Torah, the original translation of the Torah, which is the way to understand the Torah in its correct translation, is that it was translated that man became a living being, he became a creature of speech. Says the Baal Shem Tov, Ki inyan ruach adam mikirba v'chai shaloi hu hakoyach hadibar shebekirba. Where is the expression of the ruach of the person? The ruach is the wind, the life force of the person, the chayis and the life force of the person. Where is that expressed? It's expressed specifically. Where is the mizbata? Where does it show itself? Where does it manifest itself within our lives? This is particularly, it shows itself in the speech that we speak. Because when a person speaks, when you're speaking, like we said before, when you're speaking, you're taking your breath, your vitality, your oxygen, literally your oxygen, your life force, and you're using it, you're expunging it, externalizing it through the power of speech. So speech, the root of speech is breath. And breath is the chayas. That's called neshama, every soul, called neshima, every breath a person takes. The breath is the person's chayas. Where do you see a person's aliveness? You see a person's aliveness in his heartbeat, in the movement of his blood, in the breathing process, in the moving and returning. This is where you see a person's chayas. This is where you see a person's aliveness. So the person's aliveness is expressed in his words. So when a person, therefore, when a person speaks, what the person is really doing, we said, like I said last time, essentially every time you take an out breath, every time you're taking an exhale, you're dying a little bit. That's actually what the process of death is an expunsion of the carbon dioxide. Whatever you're breathing out of yourself, which is there's a process of dying, a returning. Ultimately, a person after 120 takes his final breath, his final exhale, and expires. So every time you're speaking, you're also giving out your chayis, you're giving out your livelihood. So how does a person rejuvenate and return and get back energy? Because since the life force is continuously pumping through you, so you're externalizing it, but you're also constantly receiving. So you're receiving, the life force moves into the world in a circular motion. It's like a circuitry of an inhale and exhale, of a ratz of a shoy, back and forth. You're receiving the life force, And then you're speaking words, and when you're speaking the words, you're expunging it, you're externalizing it, but you're receiving more because you're connected to your source. Therefore, the more a person speaks, in a sense, the more a person is actually connected to their life force. And the more, because this is what's the life that's coming through him, and the more a person speaks, he receives therefore chayes chadash, new, renewed vitality. And therefore, even though the truth is that through every time you're speaking, you're giving out your chayes, you're giving out your livelihood, your life force. But the truth is that every time you speak, you receive new chayes, you receive new enlivening. So you're basically, the idea, what the Baal Shem Tov is saying is that speech is a process of entering into the divine flow. And just like the divine flow is constantly moving and going and returning, is constantly inhaling and exhaling, going into the universe and out of the universe, there's a constantly renewal of creation at every single moment. We spoke last time. And since it's the process of renewal of the creation, Vayomer Hashem Yor, Hashem said, let there be light. The world was created through divine speech. And the world was created through the 10 utterances. This is not something that happened in the past. But these words are continuously being expressed. The words that say, the divine animating force that says, Vayomer Hashem Yor, let there be light, or let there be a table, and then all the formations that we spoke about last time, and all the types of tzirufim, of combinations. That tziruf, that divine combination, is being recreated every single moment, and it's the specific life force of the divine combination of the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei with the 27 letters of the Torah. Exactly that combination is continuously reviving at every single moment, every single hour. A new divine life force is animating and giving chayas, giving life force to that created reality, to that divine speech. That is then flows down into the universe. A person receives it through inhaling, through breathing in, through taking it in, and then every single moment is also exhaling and returning back to its source. And therefore the chayas, the person enters into the actual circuitry of the flow of creation. So the flow of creation is both a creation at every single moment, and since there's a creation of every single moment, there must be also the destruction of every single moment. Which means if every single moment is created from new, there's a new divine life force that's being created, that's the koyach that's creating. Then there is the power of the gevura, that's the chesed moment, that's the moment of giving, that the life force is giving. And then it's returning back, going back to source, which is the idea of the gevura, it's returning back to its source, which is the kirega ba'apayv. In every single moment is the moment of wrath, which means in every single moment the world is being created and destroyed at every single moment. But the creative force is flowing through the person, and when the creative force is flowing through the person, and a person is using this creativity in their own way by also continuously speaking positive words, then they're completing the circuitry. Now, in this teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, it doesn't say clearly anything about positive or negative, but there is a teaching that is from Tziva Asar Vash, that comes from one of the original svarim from the Baal Shem Tov, text of the Baal Shem Tov, not that the Baal Shem Tov wrote it, and originally said in Yiddish, like the Alter Rebbe writes in Garrison Kodesh, and he really said in the vernacular, and then it was translated to Hebrew, but this is original teaching. This is what he says. And this is a very profound and important fundamental teaching of the teachings of Chassidus and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. It's a fundamental understanding. First of all, one fundamental which we spoke about before is that the idea of davening the idea of prayer is that a person enters through dveikus, through cleaving, through avaviyir, love and awe, through misdavik and the oisius to a person, to the oir, connects with the light of the letters. A person has achana and bittul, has humility and nullification of the separate eye, all the practices that get you into that state. But then when a person enters into the prayer state, you become part of the shefa itself. Not that you're asking and it's being received and then it's being given, but you become part of the shefa itself in the act of prayer, which is that the shefa, the divine life force, that's an affirmation to creation, that's creating reality every single moment. So let's say there's a person that's sick, or a person that needs livelihood, a person that needs a shidduch, a person needs health or whatever a person needs in this world. So there's a blockage. The divine life force that's animating and life affirming and creative and giving is to give life, to give chayes to this world, to give an animation to this world. If there's a blockage, there's some type of blockage, then the life force doesn't flow correctly through. It's like it's literally doesn't circulate correctly. It's almost like the blood is not circulating correctly in the body. This could be like an interesting metaphor. So there is no proper circulation, then the person, because there's a blockage, then the arteries are blocked, and therefore the limb is broken or is inanimate, which means that the flow of health and hashpa and shefa of life force has to get to this individual person. There's some type of blockage, for whatever reason there is. And what a person is doing when they're mispalo, when a person is davening, is a person becomes part of the shefa, part of the flow itself. And now they're saying we're going to open up. Through dvekas, we're going to connect to the oir, to the world of Atzilus, the oir, to the light itself. The place where the fundamental building blocks are created of the divine speech that gives rise to creation. And by speaking the words of davening, by speaking the words of tefillah, by speaking the words of prayer, you're actually creating these new realities. So you're tapping into the shefa, and you're recreating things and opening up blockages that allow now for the shefa to flow, for the flow to flow correctly, to circulate correctly in this person's body, for example, and the person should have healing. That's one fundamental idea. So it's not that you're asking, it's not like, to use another metaphor of this, it's not like there's a flow of water which irrigates and gives chayes and gives life force, and you're coming with your little pitcher of water and saying, please Hashem, let me have some of that water, and you're taking a little bit of water from the shefa, which can also work in some way. Let me have some of that water, some of that aliveness, life-affirming force to bring on healing for this person. That's one way to do it. The other way, in a higher level of davening, the higher level of tefillah, with dvekus, with complete noiches p'nei Hashem, when a person is davening really in a state with connectivity and with connected to the source, the person actually jumps into the water itself and becomes part of the flow, and is pushing the water forward in different directions. So you're not pulling the water to yourself, but you're actually becoming part of the flow itself and allowing the water to spread outward. That's what you're furthering the divine flow. You're furthering the shefa. So here's what the Baal Shem Tov said. That's one yesod. That's one fundamental. Another important, very important teaching in the teachings of Chassidus, and the way it's described by the Baal Shem Tov first clearly, is that what is the difference between tov and ra? What is the difference between something that we call good and something that is the opposite of good, tov and ra? Now, usually this is an ethical question. Good is something that is ethically positive and or morally positive or negative. That's the definition of tov and ra. It could be religiously and ritually positive and negative. It could be ben adam l'chaver, ben adam l'makom. There's between man and man, between man and God. That's one way of understanding. But then there's an oimik lefi ma'amik. There's something that's even deeper than that, which is at the root of the idea. That the idea of kedusha, the idea of holy, the idea of something that's sacred, is when a person connects to the flow and is continuously this divine flow. Furthering life is kedusha. The idea of tuma, of sasum, of something of impure, something that's closed, that's something that's congealed, and something that's klipa, that's the negative side, is when you're cutting off life. Either you're furthering the shefa, or you're cutting off the shefa. Either you're furthering the life-affirming force, or you're cutting it off and becoming selfish and just want to either own it for yourself or take it away from somebody else. Let's see the way it's written. Here's what the Baal Shem Tov says. When a person speaks words, positive words, specifically positive words, positive, there are very different definitions of what positive can mean. The Rambam in Pirush HaShais and Avos speaks about the 5 levels of speech, but generally positive means it's something that's holy, something that's pure, something that's life-affirming, something that's confirming to another person. It's mo'ela, it's mo'el, it's helpful to the other person. You give a person chizuk, you give a person encouragement. You lift up a person, you tell him a Dvar Torah, you tell him a teaching of Torah. That is all part of the world of positive. So when a person speaks positive words, V'hadibur chayesh shel adam, and the dibur, like we said before, the speech itself is actually where it's mizbata, it's revealed, it's manifest. The chayes, the life force of a person, of course, it's also revealed in his breath, but we want to talk about where there's a particular angle of avodah relevant to here, of some type of divine service which we can do, and that's really expressed more in the world of speech, where a person's breath is expressed. We'll see how this works. And the chayes of a person, how does a person have livelihood? How does a person, what gives a person the aliveness? That comes from Hashem. That comes from Many Baruch Shmoi. That comes from the Holy One. When a person speaks, therefore, when a person speaks, the words that they speak ascend from below to above. And then arouses a new divine exhale, which previously was called the Hevel Elyon, or the Dibur Elyon, the supernal breath, or the supernal speech. And then he receives even more. So when a person speaks positive words, so then they themselves are circulating now the divine life force that's circulating throughout creation. So the creative divine force says the tree should be a tree, and it should give flowers, and it should be a healthy tree. And the human being should be a healthy person, and it should have parnasa, and it should have livelihood, and it should be able to support himself and have a lot of nachas from his children. And the person should function in the optimum way. That's what the shefa wants. Sometimes kakim, sometimes there's blockages, but that's what the shefa wants. The shefa wants to enter. That's the galus hashchina, like we spoke many previously. The galus hashchina, the exile of the shechina, is that it cannot express itself correctly. But that's what the shefa wants. Now, when a person davens, when a person prays, and now furthers this chayes further, so now that opens up new channels for this person to be healed. So this person now can have parnasa, can have livelihood, can have now nachas from his children, can have nachas from himself and from his family and from his children. So when a person opens up, the person that's praying opens up these new channels, they become part of the chayes himself. It becomes part of the life force. So the more they give out, the more chayes they're putting out to the other person. Chayes again means they're giving life force, which becomes life-affirming for the other person. It's something that's positive, something that because of that the person could deal with life better. It makes the person's life a little more tolerable, and the person can understand a little bit more of their life and can make sense a little bit more about their life because of the things that you told them and encourage them, at least can deal with life in a better way. It feels more alive. You gave more chayes now. You gave more energy to the other person. Then you receive more chayes now. They receive more life force that now comes into you. But however, when a person speaks negative speech, again, what is the definition of negative? The idea of negative, that is something that's cutting off. When you discourage another person, you put down another person, when you speak, God forbid, a lie, or you say lashon hara, when you say evil words against another person, when you speak negatively to the other, or generally when you speak negative, so what you're doing is you're taking the chayes, the life force that was given to you, to confirm life, to affirm life, and to bring more life. And then you gave it out, because you spoke the words. Azai yotzim en chayes. Then the chayes leaves you, and then it doesn't return back to its source. So what you did, you took instead of hooking yourself into the generator or putting yourself into the plug, that you become rejuvenated, and now you're giving out more electricity to others. Instead, what you did is you pulled out the plug. So when you pull out a plug, you pulled yourself out away from the chayes, because the chayes is life-affirming and giving. You took that same chayes, that same life force, that gives you the ability to speak and to express yourself, and you used it to harm another person, to speak negatively to another person, to put down another person. So when you used it, you have a certain amount of energy, similar to like when you take out some type of gadget or some type of something that was plugged in for a long period of time, let's say a phone. So it's charged, so you have enough energy, you have enough electricity, you have enough to speak, to create something, and to do something, to speak negative in this context. But ultimately, you're going to end up with nothing. Why? Because there's no chayes that's returning back into you. Your words didn't rise upwards, and therefore nothing was returned. You pulled out the plug. You used what you can to disparage another person, to put down another person, and then your chayes is dissipated. Then eventually you're actually going to become completely depleted of all energy. And here's what the Baal Shem Tov said. This is why the world says, when someone speaks, sometimes a person says, he let himself go. He depleted himself through speech. There's no really good translation. Means he spoke enough and he feels depleted from his speaking. What does that mean? If a person feels depleted from speaking, that's proof, that's an indicator to him or to her. That should be an indicator that what you spoke were not words that were connected to the life force, that connected to the chayes. It was you pulled out the plug, you got enough strength to speak a particular amount of words, and then you let yourself out. You blew it out, and there's nothing left. There's no more chayes. So if a person feels depleted after speaking to another person, or that's why it goes back to what the Baal Shem Tov was saying before, that in tefillah zacha bebrura, if your words are going to be refined and pure, which means your words are going to be connected to something that's positive and life-affirming and giving, then when you speak those words, you receive more chayes, you receive more life force, and you become energized. And the proof is that after you speak, you don't feel depleted, you don't feel emptied, you feel energized, you feel revitalized. If a person davens, to give another analogy in terms of davening, if a person prays and says, I would like to daven, I want to finish with davening, I need to get up in the morning, I need to get done with it. And then when you finish davening, it's like, okay, what's the next thing? Then you didn't really daven. Now maybe you're yotze to the mitzvah of davening, maybe you fulfilled the obligation because you had a little kavana, a general kavana. But what really davening is, you didn't have. The way to know whether you really davened is when you finish davening, you don't feel like, oh, thank God it's over, I can move on with my day, but you feel alive. You feel rejuvenated. You feel re-energized. Why? Because you just expressed words. You gave positivity and holiness and sacred words into this world to bring healing, to bring shefa into this world, in all aspects of reality, throughout the entire davening, throughout all the praise, and especially throughout the Amidah Shemon Esrei, and you're bringing down all the shefa of Baruch Aleinu, and Fa'enu, and Slach Lanu, you're bringing down all this positive shefa into this world, this positive flow into this world. So when you finish, as you're davening, you're constantly becoming more energized, that when you finish davening, you should be totally alive. You should be completely alive. You should be so awake. And you should say, now I can actually engage with the world because I'm completely alive. I'm completely energized. So tefillah should be energizing, not depleting. And if it's depleting, it's proof that it wasn't with chayes. It wasn't connected to the life force. It wasn't toiv, it was ra. This is not only with regards to speech, but this is the oimik, this is the depth of what the Baal Shem Tov was saying, is that every single experience that we have to think about if the experience that we're having is selfish, which means for the self alone, that's like pulling the bucket in the image that we said before, pulling the little bucket for yourself, and it's therefore cutting off the life force? Or is it part of the shefa? Are you giving part of the shefa? What is the barometer in terms of speech, for example? How would you know? What would be an indicator to you to know whether when you speak to somebody, after speaking to the person, do you feel energized because you gave this person chayes, you gave this person life, and therefore you received even more life? Or do you feel depleted and emptied? And the sense of feeling depletion and feeling emptied is a sign that what you experienced was emptiness, was selfishness, was like trying to fill your own little bucket from the shefa, from the flow, but not part of the flow itself. And that was ra. That was broken. Ra is ru'ah, something that's broken, something that's not connected to the shefa, not connected to the Hativas Aneris is the continuation of goodness. Toiv is the continuation of goodness, to be a perpetuator of goodness in this world, or are you ra, which is broken, you're just trying to receive selfishly. This is in all aspects of life. In all aspects of life, to use this in another mashal, this is important to understand this. To give you a mundane, maybe a trite example of this, of this metaphor is, if you eat a tub of ice cream, it may be that you're feeling pleasurable and pleasure in the moment, but when you finish that ice cream, certainly if you're lactose intolerant, when you finish that ice cream, you're going to feel sick, you're going to feel empty, you're going to feel depleted. A taiva, a desire, a physical desire, emotional desire, a mental, whatever desire is, any type of desire, when the desire is quenched and fulfilled, if you feel energized, that means that the desire was positive. If you feel even more chayes, more alive, but the nature of things that are negative, or klipa, certainly averos, is that the moment you quench that desire, the moment you actually feel emptied, and you feel completely depleted. The way the Torah describes this in Shmuel Beis, in Perek Yud Gimel, it's a very unfortunate story, and we're not going to get into the details, but it's a story that Chazal call Ava Tlui B'Davar, which is Amnon and Tamar, which is a boy and a girl, and they're half brothers and sisters. It's a very terrible story, and this boy wants to be with Tamar, with his half sister, and tries to convince her, etc., and does all these ruses to get to be with her. And the Torah actually describes, the way the Tanakh describes, that he loved her. And the moment that he experienced what he wanted to experience with her, it says, Vayisna'la, Amnon, that Amnon actually despised her and hated her. This is a very deep psychological, spiritual understanding of the nature of a desire that's quenched, that's klipa, that's negative. That has a negative. When a person is there's another Rashi brings down on the pasuk, Avi imi azvuni v'Hashem yasfeni. So Rashi says that after a person's intimate, sometimes is kivut shenigva, when act is finished, each one turns around to a different direction and they go to sleep. Without getting into the details of this idea, is that when a person has intimacy or any type of relationship, certainly the very delicate relationships of intimacy, which could be Kodesh Kodashim, which could be the Holy of Holies, like the Ramban writes in his holy letter, in Geras Kodesh, in the right time, in the right person, in the right space, it could be the holiest thing. How do you know whether the act that you're doing, the desire that you're trying to fulfill, is an act of selflessness and an act of true love and a true intimacy and trying to be together with another person, or is an act purely for selfish? How do you know if you're eating, if what you're doing is toiv, is positive and ra? And the answer is, you have to see how you feel after the experience. This is across the board in every type of experience that you have, every type of encounter, every type of situations you have in this world. You always have to ask yourself, when I come out of the experience, do I feel stronger chayas? Do I feel stronger life? More life-affirming life forces pumping through me, and I feel more connected? Do I feel more love after this? Or do I feel I feel even hate or disgust and empty and depleted? Something that comes from the source of klipa, something that comes from the place of klipa, the negative side, which is the selfish side, the side that you're just trying to pull the shefa for yourself. You're trying to pull the life force to give yourself your own pleasure, to animate your own existence. But you're not trying to further for others. Always in that experience, at the end of the experience, you're going to feel depleted. You may feel high in the experience, and you may even feel good in the experience, maybe pleasurable in the experience, and whatever the experience is. But if you come out of the experience and you feel depleted and emptied and disgusted, if it's another person, you feel disgusted by your spouse, and you feel any type of resentment or any type of lack of attraction or desire or to connect of any type, any opposite of anything that's opposite of love, then you know what you actually experienced was really something that was klipa, something that was negative. And we have to always make sure that everything in life, that we're always connected to the Shefa, we're always connected to the life force, we're always trying to be a conduits to further the divine animating life-affirming, creative, positive life force that's coming into this world, that's giving me life and you life at every single moment, that's giving you new oxygen, new breath, to take that little breath that we have, to take that little chayas that we have, and try to connect it to B'sharsha, try to connect it to its source, like the Baal Shem says. And how do we connect it to its source? By taking that life force that we have and trying to live in a way that every single moment that we're alive, we're constantly trying to further that life force even more, to give and to be at service, and to constantly connect to others in a way that's giving to them and not, God forbid, taking away from them. And the result of that, of every single time of you living this way, is that you're constantly awake, you're constantly energized, you're constantly enthusiastic, you're constantly alive, because you're constantly receiving new chayas, new chayas, and new chayas, new life force, and new life force. Hashem shall we should live this way. We should have a wonderful week.